like to issue a proclamation whereas F.L. Moffett has consistently exemplified and espoused educational excellency in Shelby County in the state of Texas, and whereas F.L. Moffett has contributed significantly to the welfare and quality of life of Shelby County, and whereas F.L. Moffett has achieved a unique respect and admiration among the people of this county, be it therefore proclaimed and resolved that Sunday, December the 15th, 1991 will be observed as F.L. Moffett Day in Shelby County, Texas.
Mr. Moffett, Doc and I would like to wish you a very happy birthday and many more, and our love comes with it.
How appropriate it is to begin this celebration with a happy birthday from the second graders from the F.L. Moffett Primary School. After all, Mr. Moffett gave his life to educating the youth of the Center Independent School District. Happy birthday!
That was Mitchell Jutun with Shannon Rose's second grade music class from the F.L. Moffett Primary School. Hello, I'm Bill Rogers, and I'm happy to wish you, Mr. Moffett, a happy birthday and to introduce this videotape, which I hope will show you how much your community loves and respects you. You have, in this community, been a teacher, a coach, a principal, a superintendent, and a deacon of your church. You organized the first football team at Center High School. You also organized the vocational agricultural program. You are a member of the Texas State Teachers Association and the East Texas School Men's Club. You were very instrumental in getting the Gilmer-Aiken Education Bill passed and installed. You've been in the Rotary Club for 65 years, with perfect attendance for 48 years. In 1973, you were inducted into the Bearcat Hall of Fame at Sam Houston State University. You served on the Chamber of Commerce here in Center. You were on the board of directors of the First National Bank and of the Shelby County Fair Association. Somehow you found time to devote to local scouting, and for many, many years, you've shared your wisdom in Bible study class. Mr. Moffett, my friend, for all this, we say thanks and happy birthday. Mr. Moffett was aided by many talented and dedicated professionals during his tenure with Center Schools. Miss Ivan L. Conway, Mr. Chester McElroy, and Mr. Denton Haley remember him from the beginning.
Well, when he came here, he lived in my aunt's home.
Now, you mean when Mr. Moffett came?
Uh-huh.
And when did he come?
He came in 1921, and he lived in my aunt's home and was just part of our family. We treated him as part of our family. He was the principal here, and I was in the junior high, I guess, when he came.
What did folks think of him when he first came to town?
They liked him an awful lot.
He was a stern fellow.
Well, he was positive, but he was kind, and he didn't make decisions just on the spur of the moment. He looked ahead, made decisions after he had looked ahead to think about what could happen or what might happen. It was a very brilliant person. He was a good teacher, very positive, but very good. And when I, well, he helped mold my life, actually. And I went to school, went to college 2 years, and was not old enough to get a certificate from the state. They wouldn't issue it to me until I was 18. But Mr. Moffett went ahead and gave me a job because he knew that I had the credentials. And then I went to school in the summers after that. But he helped mold my life, and he certainly was a great influence in my teaching career.
What did the children think of him?
The children loved him.
And why was that?
Well, he mixed and mingled with them. He would come to our rooms during the classes. He would come on the campus at recesses, and he knew every child by name, and you could ask him right now who, if he remembered so-and-so, 50 years ago, and he'd say, yes, he lives in so-and-so now. He tells where he lives. He remembers all that. His mind right now is just as clear as a bell.
Did he ever do anything halfway?
Not that I know of,
He was a 100% guy.
as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Mr. Moffett came here as a vocational agriculture teacher. I think he's about, 18 years old, something like that.
18.
Yeah.
And that's all.
And then went back, he didn't have his degree, and went back a summer or two and got his degree. And about second year he's here, they made him superintendent. Or third year, maybe, something like that.
That quickly?
Yeah, it wasn't long.
So he proved himself as
He's been superintendent nearly all the time he's here, all
Right.
except
I
just a
know.
very few years.
But he taught some too,
He taught one class,
for geometry.
as long as he stayed there, yeah. One class of geometry. That's all he taught. Taught me geometry.
And did he do that right along while being superintendent year after year?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So he must have been a pretty good teacher too. Then.
Oh, he was, he could, I could tell some good ones. He's whooped me, no telling how many times.
Is that something that that was a part of his philosophy?
Yeah,
Spare the rod, spoil the child.
he believed in that. Now, I don't remember what I did on this particular occasion, but it must have been worse than not studying. May have been some teacher sending me down there. But it was one Monday, and he just kept me down there. And I stayed with him till Friday. I went to class with him. I went to the post office with him. I went to the bank with him. I made step for step with him. Knowing all the time that before it was over with, I was going to get a whipping, you know. And did on Friday evening. He said, we best well get this over with. And he told me, now that was the way he operated, see. But he broke me. That was pretty good. Now, that was whooping. When you had to stay down there with him for a week, and a teacher sending you lesson down there, and you getting them down in there in his office, and following him around. Now, that'll break you from the habit pretty quick.
What made him a real outstanding superintendent?
Students all loved him. They loved him to death. And he could whoop me, and I'd get up and thank him for it. See?
What do you think he liked the best? Do you think he liked being a superintendent or a principal or a geometry teacher or a coach? What do you think was really in his heart?
I expect deep down coaching was. I'm guessing now. This is strictly. I know he was a good superintendent, one good as you could find. I just think that he started out coaching here in Center. See, he coached the first football team here in Center.
Is there any particular thing you'd want to say to him, or maybe just wish him a happy birthday?
Well, I wish him a happy birthday, but he means more to me than that. I was in his Sunday school class for years. I stayed in Sunday. He's had a tremendous influence on my life from my say elementary school all the way on up, and then getting into the spiritual, to the Christian part of it. See, he's had a big influence on me there with that. But he's still Mr. Moffett. He's not Freddie.
Okay.
Never was, to me.
Mr. Denton Haley.
I thought I might mention about him being very conservative, a very, very good schoolman, because he believed in teaching school and in spending the time on teaching school. One of the best ways and keys of teaching school is time on task teaching. And our time was spent teaching while we were teaching there. And while I was going to school there too. He was superintendent when I was going to school here. And he believed in time on task. Now everything was pleasant. It was just fine and pleasant as far as that's concerned. But he believed in teaching. He was conservative, and that's fine with me because I am too. And he would, when I first started teaching here, first year I started teaching, I was teaching chemistry. And after the first day or two, I went in the lab and I came back and I told him, I said, Mr. Moffett, now, I don't know if I can teach chemistry without a periodic chart of the elements. There's none in there. And he said, well, if you would use it, then he said, I don't mind buying something if teacher's going to use it. But to buy something and then not use it, I said, no, I use this one every day. And just a short while we got it. We got what we needed to teach with. And, but we got the picture that there wasn't any use of ordering something else, you know, which is just the way it should be. But it's good memories back there, very good memories that I have. And much of it was due to him. But Mr. Moffett was, he was excellent for teaching. He believed in something. If it would help, then he would want it. I remember once I had noticed how coaches would go to this school and band teachers would go to this one or take them and so on, and I hadn't been anywhere. And my opinion was mine was just about the most important thing in school, science, biology, and chemistry. And I noticed I got a letter once that a science teachers convention was held going to be in Austin. And I told Mr. Moffett about it, that Mr. Moffett, I want to go to that convention, and I want school to pay my way. I said it all at one time. And he said, he thought just a half a minute. I think he already probably knew about it. And he said, he was seeing the program to see what's going to be. And I told him, yes, sir, and very good to it. I probably told him 2 or 3 things. He didn't ask to see it, but he just wanted me to have seen it and knows. He said, well, that'll be all right. He said, if you think it'll be any good to go.
How about his relationship with his teachers?
Good, serious, because teaching is serious. And, but it was good, very good. His teachers liked him, respected him. I don't know if I ever heard any of them that felt otherwise about him. don't believe I ever heard of one. Most of them really thought of him as a good school person, just a very good, and of course a good person, number one, and then a very good school person too. And people still think that. People everywhere, people in the church think so too, and no question, but other churches other than ours think so too, and he's just really a fine person. Like they say, he's one, they don't make him much like that anymore.
Vera Covington worked closely with Mr. Moffett in 1923 and later in the 50s, teaching math and serving as his aide with many administrative duties.
I did a lot of work. I fixed all the seats out in the gym and out at the football field and everybody's name, and you don't know what all I did do.
Oh, he was here all those years, and I guess the school took on his personality, and that's kind of what we're trying to get at is he had a management style about him, and it was to buy cracky, make the school work no matter what.
Yeah, no foolishness.
No. But he depended on you as a lieutenant.
Well, of course, Mr. Malone did lots too, you know. But I had my hands full. I never was idle.
Was he bashful about asking you to do things?
No, but he was not, he never, I was told to begin with what I had to do.
What, you said one time that you started the fire. You didn't really start.
No, I didn't start the fire.
No, not that fire, but I mean to warm the school up. You weren't really a custodian now.
No, I didn't do that.
Okay.
I thought when the building burned. I was in the hall, and I heard something, a noise, a terrible noise in the auditorium. And so I just stood there, and I thought I better look and see what that is. And when I opened the door, well, the draperies, you know, the things, you know, were hanging down to the floor, you know, and they were burning. That one over on this side was burning. And it was already going across up there. And then they got everybody out just as quiet. We didn't have a bit of...
You must have been one of the first ones to discover the fire.
I discovered it. Yeah, I sure did.
That's a horrible thing.
Yeah. And if I hadn't been standing out in that hall, there's no telling how bad it would have been because everybody else was in their classroom. See, I didn't have a class that period. And so that's how come me to be in the hall. In fact, I've been told to go out there to stand for something else. I don't know just what it was. But,
did that hurt Mr. Moffett when the school burned?
Well, I'm sure it did. But Mr. Moffett is not an emotional kind of a person. He's just that way. Now, I've known Mr. Moffett for many years. And in 19 and 22 and 23, Mr. Moffett was agriculture teacher and football coach in Center, at Center High School. I taught the 5th grade that year. The next year, Mr. Moffett went back to college, and I think he came back the following year. Now, that's all I've said about that now. Then, in 36 years later, in 1958, Mr. Moffett called me to see if I'd come and teach math in high school. I gladly accepted the offer. Several years before this, my 3 girls had graduated under Mr. Moffett. All right. One day at school, I met Mr. Moffett down the hall, and he asked if I had seen his new chair. Someone had given him a new desk chair, and when I told him no, he wanted me to come on and go see it. When I told him no, I stepped inside his office while he went around the desk to sit in his new chair. He leaned back in the chair and turned completely over, backwards and out of sight. I could not laugh about it until I found that he was not hurt. I stepped back out in the hall and told someone what had happened, and then I finished up my good laugh. Mr. Moffett and I have never talked about what happened. He's never mentioned it.
Mr. S.H. Fletcher, retired center school superintendent, remembers Mr. Moffett.
When I first met Mr. Moffett, probably in 1945, I had graduated from Stephen F. Austin and had taught about 4 years. And through those 4 years, I had become a person that would go to conventions, and I met him at a convention. And of course, then I met him in center because I married a Shelby County girl. And by the way, Evelina Stanley, who graduated under Mr. Moffett in 1937. And so then when I came as school superintendent here in 1974, well, then it was not uncommon for Mr. Moffett and I to see us together somewhere, and we'd be visiting about administration. So this gives you a little bit of an introduction of how I come to know Mr. Moffett. In Mr. Moffitt's effort at the center school, a lot of people don't understand what is being a school superintendent. It really amounts to being a number of things, depending upon your desire and how many people you want to help and this type thing. He not only was superintendent here in center, but he contributed to the school in a number of ways, and he contributed to the community in a number of ways. Let's look at some of those. Mr. Moffett was a teacher. He wanted to be remembered as a teacher above all. He was a coach. Mr. Moffett saw the sweeping changes of education come in 1949, the so-called Gilmer-Aiken laws. He was a part of that locally, and he was a part of it statewide. He served on various educational committees, this type thing. He was very interested in anything that contributed to education. And of course, he was a conservative thinker, so he was always trying to do what would work for a center or some nearby school or somebody in a nearby county, what would be good for East Texas. And he was real sincere about this, and he was real committed to it. And we look a little bit further and we see that at one time he was president of the State Teachers Association, the state president, and which was quite an honor. And this was based upon the trust that people had in him from other schools, from other areas. So this is the thing that we certainly have to be proud of for him. It's just simply impossible to explain in detail the contribution and the organization that Mr. Moffett gave to the center school and to the community as a whole. And trying to talk about this, we find ourselves listing many of these things that we've talked, and we really just touch the hem of the garment when we talk about these. So finally, I need to say to you, Mr. Moffett, I congratulate you and I wish you the best that can be on your 90th birthday. This community certainly must love you and appreciate you for all that you've done for them. The pinnacle of this was shown when the new school, F.L. Moffett Primary School, was named after you. What a great honor. One of the statements I've heard F.L. Moffett say, and not once but many times, may best sum up all this that we're talking about. He would say to me, I hate to get old, but I'm glad I came along when I did, at a time when I could help people the best or the most. Mr. Moffett, hats off to you today, a man that gave his life for others.
One of Center's best coaches, Mitchell Jatun, remembers his mentor, Coach Moffett.
I first met Mr. Moffett in 1931 when he came to Miss Truitt's third grade classroom. I was a new student from Snow Hill and Lamar schools, and I knew he was an important person because all the kids got real quiet as he appeared at the door. 10 years prior to this, at age 19, Mr. Moffett began his Center Independent School District educational career. In 1921, Mr. Moffett organized the first football team. He coached all the sports, including football, basketball, track, and baseball. Some of the early athletes that he coached were George Smith, Aubrey Wynn, Joe Neal Runnels, Larry Paul, and Homer Bryce, who, by the way, are all living. Some deceased former athletes were Dr. Hap Rogers, Laban Hall, Hervey Hughes, Leroy Alford, Buddy and Melvin Hicks, Buck Woods, Johnny Thompson, Otho Hagan, and a fellow by the name of Meat Skin McDaniel. Transportation was a real problem back in the 20s. Coach Moffett tells of the time the Center High School football team rode to Jasper on a train. After the game, each player would spend the night with a Jasper player. This was reversed when the Jasper team came to Center. Once prior to the Jasper game, Coach Rollins asked Mr. Moffett if he would like to go to a local cane mill and watch them grind sugar cane. They did, and upon arrival at the mill, both teams were there chewing the cane and drinking the juice. 10 laps brought the Rough Riders back into shape for the game. During World War II, football seasons of 1943 and 1944, Mr. Moffett donned his coaching hat again, and he states that this was the most rewarding experience during those war years. Mr. Moffett's former player will attest to his attributions as a coach. He was a stern taskmaster to himself as well as his players. He taught that each player must pay a price for the team to win. Unsportsmanlike conduct was not tolerated. His team never quit. His players won on the field, but most important, they succeeded in life after school was over. Coach Moffett would attest to the fact that nowhere are more lasting friendships made than between players and coaches. Mr. Moffett was the type of coach that put his players first, the school second, and the coach third. To him, that was the only way to coach. And Mr. F.L. Moffett was one of the finest coaches that have ever coached at Center High School.
Mr. Moffett's civic energy was given to the Rotary Club. A fellow Rotarian, Mr. John Reagan Harris, helps chronicle this aspect of his life.
Mr. Moffett became a member of the Rotary Club of Center with a classification of education in 1926, 1 year after the local club was organized. In his words, if you're going to devote yourself to anything, you need to do it full time. Well, 65 years later, he's still a very active member of Rotary Club of Center, giving him the longest continuous membership of the club. And of those years, he has a perfect weekly attendance of 48 years. Mr. Moffett served as program chairman of the club for many years and was president in 1937-38. It was during this year that the club helped to organize the Boy Scout Troops 114 and 116. In earlier years, the club helped the community in building roads, and again, in his words, in real honest-to-goodness cleanup campaigns, and with one of his favorite projects, the Shelby County Fair Association. The same group of men who were active in the Rotary Club were the men who were found doing the work of the Chamber of Commerce, the Fair Association, and any other worthwhile civic project. This certainly included Mr. Moffett as one of the leaders. During recent years, Mr. Moffett has served on the Rotary Foundation Committee and has been in charge of installing new members into the club. Just as he was an educator to his school students for some 45 years, so he is today to new members who join Rotary each year, continuing to prove himself loyal to his profession as teacher and to his Rotary classification. In Rotary, there are supposed to be no titles nor surnames used, but I've never been able to say FL nor Ferdy. So, Mr. Moffett, on behalf of the Rotary Club of Center, it is my honor and privilege to extend to you our love, our appreciation, and our respect on your 90th birthday, and to say thank you for your lifetime of unselfish service above self.
Miss Mary Terry had been a member of First Baptist Church for over 10 years when Mr. Moffett moved to Center. She remembers.
I remember Mr. Moffett being in the First Baptist Church since he came to Center, I think, in 1921, in the early 20s. And he was always a faithful member and did what he could for the support of the church. He loved his church and loved the service of the Lord. These were the years that Mr. Moffett has been a part of the First Baptist Church, are years when great advances have been made and many changes. There was prosperity during the 20s, and then the Depression hit, I think, in 1929 and went worse into the 30s, but he stayed right with us, and our church came through all right. I don't know what year he became a deacon, but I think he was a Sunday school teacher just about all the time that he was here. And for many years he's been a deacon. He did a great service for the church when he got married and brought a lovely young woman who had been trained as a pastor's daughter in the Presbyterian church, and she brought all of her skills and talents and became active in our church and did her part for the church and for the community and for the school and everything, and they raised a lovely family. He was faithful to his church all the time. He was regular in attendance. He did whatever he was asked to do. He taught his Sunday school class. He served as a deacon, and he didn't push himself, but he assumed all responsibilities that he needed to, and the church owes him a whole lot, as much as, you know, any other faithful person. And with his educational background and his standing in the community, he was able to contribute a great deal. Of course, he taught a class of men for a long time, a big class, and he had great influence on them. But I think Mr. Moffett was a very successful educator, and I think that he was recognized in the state of Texas among educators as one of the outstanding ones. I thank Mr. Moffett for holding up a high standard of behavior for the pupils in the school and for the community and for the church. I think he's always stood strongly for what's right and what's good.
Family, school, church, community. Was there more? Judge Benny Bowles discloses a lifetime love of scouting.
Now, what a lot of folks do not know, Mr. Moffett, is that you became a Boy Scout at the age of 11 in the year 1912, just 2 years after the Boy Scouts of America was founded in this country. Now, in 1925, while you were serving as an administrator and a teacher and a coach for Center High School, you were approached by a Brother Poston, who was a scoutmaster here in Center, Texas, and he was needing an assistant, one of the local troops, and he came to you and asked you if you would help him out, and you know, it was just a natural thing for you to do, and certainly you told him that you would, and you served in that capacity as an assistant scoutmaster for 2 years. And there was a professional scouter by the name of Harkey. He was in overall charge of the scouting program during the Depression years of the 1930s. And one of his functions when he came into this part of the country was to organize a Boy Scout council. And again, one of the men that he called upon was you, Mr. F.L. Moffett. And again, it was just very natural that you responded and told him that you would do it, help in any way that you could. And then as a result of the planning and the insight of yourself and other men of the East Texas area that he called upon, where the East Texas Area Council, the Boy Scouts of America, came into existence. And then it wasn't long after that that Mr. Harkey decided that it was time for the council to have a Boy Scout camp of their very own. And so by this time you were a member of the executive board of the East Texas Area Council, and that board was called upon to find a Boy Scout camp, create a Boy Scout camp. And you leased the site, and later it became known as Camp Tonkawa. Now, and this became a future summer encampment for thousands of young boys. And of course, what is there to say for those thousands that have attended? They can never forget that cold water swim that all of them remember so very fondly to this day, and the wonderful warm memories that they have of Camp Tonkawa. And then during the years of World War II, well, all the local scoutmasters, it appeared, ended up serving in the military. And again, there was no one to take the local scouters to Camp Tonkawa. And you recognized that situation, and you responded to it the way that you always did. And then for 2 successive years, when there were no scoutmasters, you volunteered to take young boys to Camp Tonkawa. And during one of those years, you carried 1 troop, and during the following year, you carried 2 troops to that fine encampment. And today, as that I've discussed with you, you still recall with fond memories the strong leadership of the patrol leaders that made your job as an acting scoutmaster so much easier in those days long ago. Now, Mr. Moffett, I recognize that you are the recipient of many honors from the Boy Scouts of America. And all of those honors, though, can be summed up upon your receipt in 1946 of the highest award the scouting program has to offer a volunteer, and that's the Silver Beaver. And it is given very simply for distinguished service to boyhood. So, Mr. Moffett, as a member of the executive board of the East Texas Area Council, I and all scouters of the East Texas Area Council, past and present, we salute you. We wish you a very happy birthday.
Mr. Moffett, there's not enough time to include all those who honor you on your 90th birthday. We know the pride you have in your family, the achievements of your children, the devotion you shared with your wife, Jane. I'm sure your family joins us in our tribute to you today. You have taught us and you teach us. You inspire us You help us to believe in ourselves and in our community. You show us the great importance of faith. The definition of a saint is one who makes it easy for another to be a Christian. And you have done that, and you continue to do that. There's been sorrow in your life, as well as joy. But you've refused defeat and denied your faith to be shaken. Your school burned, yet somehow that strengthened you. It was rebuilt in short time. You set an example. We have tried to follow that example. We have tried to tell you that we are proud of you. More than that, we would have you know that we love you, and that each and every one of us, all of us, celebrate with you on the anniversary of your birth and wish for you many, many more to come. Happy birthday, Mr. Moffett.
Well, happy birthday, Mr. Moffett.
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 Happy birthday, Mr. Moffett, and many more of them.